I love all this Jesus stuff and this deep, deep joy stuff, but it doesn't seem like the right time for me. It doesn't seem like the time for me when Jesus is going to come into my life and change everything. Well, friends, I want to tell you tonight that even when it's off schedule, even when it seems like the timing is wrong, even when it seems like the most ridiculous thing to ever happen, if you ask Jesus, he'll do it anyway. He'll do it anyway. Even when it's off schedule, even when the timing seems wrong, he will come into your life and he will do it anyway, okay? Even when you think, man, like how could, because it blows your mind, right? This is crazy. The God of the universe, right, who sees every single planet and every single star, he sees every single kind of inch of creation, and he knows every atom and every molecule and every electron, and he's the most powerful being that ever existed and ever will exist. He's eternal, he's massive, he's humongous. How could it possibly be that God who's so cosmic in scale could be interested in me? Isn't that crazy? Especially when you think, because in your life, I know that as you're kind of doing all of that stuff because you desire kind of status and wealth, and it's almost like you desire satisfaction and joy in your life, and so maybe it is clubbing, maybe it is exams, maybe it is academic success. The reason why you plough so much time and investment into those things is because you kind of know that you need to do things in your life in order to improve yourself, okay? Because if you don't do those things, then it's almost like you're doing that stuff. Maybe it's academic achievement, and the reason why you are striving so hard for academic achievement is because it's almost like you're trying to wash yourself clean and make yourself pure and make yourself respectable. And the reason why you're doing it is because you know the truth, and that's actually that there is something wrong with you. There's something innately wrong with you. And so if that is true, if you're working so hard because there is actually something innately wrong with you, then how could it possibly be that the God of the universe that created anything could ever show some interest in me? Well, look, he does. He loves you. He loves you. Even when it's off schedule. Even when the timing seems completely wrong. Even when it seems ridiculous. The God of the universe, in your weak state, where you're trying anything that you can in life to try and bring you satisfaction and bring you joy, and nothing is working, and nothing is working, and nothing is working, even in the midst of your pain, he sees you and he loves you. And even when it's off schedule, even when the timing is wrong, he wants to step into your life and do something about it. I mean, look, what on earth is he doing at a wedding? This is the God of the universe. What is he doing at a wedding? And this, in this time, this would have been, these people getting married, they would have been a couple of teenagers. So the God of the universe, he's at a wedding, and he does this miracle to turn water into wine to basically save a couple of teenagers from some embarrassment. I mean, isn't that the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard? And yet that is what God is like. He's ridiculous in the way that he cares about you, and in the way that he loves about you, and the things that he will do for you. He cares about you deeply. He will do ridiculous things to show his grace to you. He'll do it even when it's off schedule. But friends, if you want him to step into your life and provide that joy, then you are gonna need to start to follow Jesus' mother's advice. And Jesus' mother's advice was this: do whatever he tells you. Did you see that? Do whatever he tells you. And you are going to have to start to do that in your own life. Do whatever he tells you. And just see what Jesus tells the servants to do. He tells them to take, and it says that in verses sort of 6 onwards, it says that they're to take these 6 stone water jars that are nearby, and they're the jars that the Jews use for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. And Jesus says to them, fill the jars with water. And so they fill them to the brim. And then Jesus says, now take some out and take it to the master of the banquet. So they take some out and they take it to the master of the banquet. And the master of the banquet tries it, and he is like amazed, because he's like, this is like the best wine that I've ever tasted. It's like some incredible, I meant to like look up some Italian wine so I could quote it, because I don't know anything about wine, but imagine it's like the best Italian wine you've ever tasted. Okay, that's what this wine is like. And he's confused as well, because he's like, normally at a wedding what happens is in this kind of wedding is basically you bring out the good wine first, and then when everybody's kind of slightly wasted, then you bring out the kind of cheap wine at the end. But he says this time you've brought out the best wine last, because this is the true joy that Jesus makes in your life. It's better than anything else you could ever imagine. Okay, but here's the important thing that I want you to understand tonight. And that is that Jesus tells them to fill up these ceremonial washing jars with water and bring them to him. And now you will have things in your life that are a bit like ceremonial washing jars, Because in the Jewish culture, these ceremonial washing jars, they would have been the jars that contained the water that the Jewish people would have used to cleanse themselves and wash themselves, to make themselves pure, so that they could experience a relationship with God, so that they could experience true joy in their life, so that they could experience true satisfaction, so that they could experience true meaning. And what I want to suggest to you tonight is that you have things in your life that are a bit like Jewish ceremonial washing jars. And it might be exams, it might be clubbing, it might be pleasing your friends, it might be pleasing your family. And you do all of these things because you think that in doing them, you are somehow washing yourself clean and making yourself available so that you can experience, maybe you don't use the language of God, but so that you can experience true satisfaction, true meaning and true joy in your life. And so it's like you're washing yourself and you're washing yourself and you're washing yourself, but you never actually get completely clean, but you keep washing yourself and you're pouring on the water and you're pouring on the water. Well, Jesus says, whatever that is in your life, and you guys will know what it is. Jesus says, you need to bring that before me. You need to bring before me your ceremonial washing jars. Whatever it is in your life that you look to find meaning, to find satisfaction, to find joy, bring it before me and put it at my feet. Because the thing about that water is, one thing is it never ever works. And the other thing is actually that water might be quite dirty, because some of the things that you do to find meaning and satisfaction in your life, they're not actually good for you. Right? I think of that guy with all that money and all of that status, and I think of some of the things that he did to get to that position of having all of that money and all of that status. They weren't necessarily good things. And there might be things you're doing in your life right now to find satisfaction and meaning and joy in your life. They might not necessarily be good things. And so it's a bit like you're washing yourself with dirty water and it's got like bits in it and it's brown and it's kind of disgusting and it smells, but you don't know what else to do. So you just keep washing yourself with the same water. Well, Jesus says, bring it to my feet anyway. Bring it to my feet anyway. And what I will do with that water is I will transform that water into the wine that satisfies, into the wine that makes a difference into your life, into the wine that will bring you true joy, true satisfaction, true meaning. Because I remember another story with Jesus, and this was a few years later, and he sat down for his last ever meal with his followers. And there he's drinking a glass of wine, a cup of wine, and he says to his followers that whenever you drink wine like this in the future, you are to remember me, because this wine is going to represent my blood, because I am about to go and die. And the reason why I'm about to go and die is because I'm going to go and I'm going to be unfairly trialed. And then as he's unfairly trialed, he's then dragged out of this court and he's given this instrument of torture within the Roman world, this cross, and he drags this cross up to the top of this hill. And then what happens is the Romans, they hammer rusted nails into his hands as Jesus is strung there like an animal. And then he dies the most painful and most torturous of deaths. And do you know what happens in that moment? What happens in that moment is the blood of Jesus pours out from his body. It pours out from his body. It pours out from his body. And that blood is his very life. And friends, the life of Jesus was the life of true satisfaction, the life of true joy, the life of true meaning, for he was God himself, and the life of God, it pours out in that very moment. And look guys, if you bring your ceremonial washing jars before Jesus and place them at the foot of the cross, then what happens in that moment is, as the life of Jesus pours out of his body, as all that blood empties, the life of joy, the life of meaning, the life of satisfaction, it pours into your ceremonial washing jar, and it fills it. And it fills it, and it fills it up. And all of a sudden, you find that in giving up that stuff that you once looked to find meaning and satisfaction and joy in, and say, Jesus, take it, he does this miracle of transformation. We talked about it last night, where it's almost like he takes your life and he exchanges it for his life. And in that you find a connection to God, because Jesus was the Son of God. And you find this connection and this relationship with God like nothing else you will ever find anywhere. And it brings this feeling that Tor was talking about, where you can know that it does not matter what happens. It doesn't matter what happens in life. You could get a terminal illness. You could grow up and have a child and that child could die. You could go through the most horrific of circumstances. You read of people in the Bible that followed Jesus and they lived a life of absolute joy, and yet they were beheaded they were crucified, they were tortured, and they were imprisoned. And even in the midst of that, they still had immense joy. I think of a guy called Paul in the Bible, and he says in his life, even when he's in the middle of prison being tortured, he writes this letter to some other Christians, and do you know what he says to them when he's in the middle of prison and he's been tortured and he's dying? He says this, he says, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say, rejoice. Because there's such a sense of joy there, because Paul gave up everything and Paul had many things in his life that he was looking to make himself clean, and he gives them all up and he says, Jesus, take it all. I don't want this anymore. This exams are not giving me satisfaction. This clubbing life is not giving me satisfaction. This kind of pleasing my parents is not giving me satisfaction. Jesus, take it away from me. I don't want this life anymore. I want your life, because your life is the life of true joy. So guys, look, you have a choice to make, a decision to make. Either you are going to carry on your life from this moment forward, trying to wash yourself with that water to find satisfaction in your life, and finding it just makes you more dirty, or you can come to Jesus and say, Jesus, would you make my water into your wine? Would you make my empty life into your true joy? And you'll find with the water, you're on your own. With the wine, you'll find that God's got you. With the water, you'll find that when you die, that's it. There's nothing else. With the wine, you'll find you'll live a perfect life forever. With the water, you'll find you'll have to keep washing yourself and keep washing yourself and keep washing yourself. With the wine, you'll find that you are clean before God and perfect, shame-free, set free forever. You know,